What's up, my beautiful people? So, today I have a very important lesson for everybody, okay? And so, today we're going to be talking about market structure and the rhythm that the market moves in, which that's what market structure is. We're going to be talking about break of structures, change of characters, retracements, pullbacks, and ultimately how to get into our trades to ride them as long as we can to make profits. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, guys. So to first start off, we are going to talk about market structure. What is market structure? Market structure is the rhythm and patterns that the market follows in a certain trend. Okay, so for example, we have an uptrend. Okay, so an uptrend, what do we have? We have higher highs and higher lows. In a downtrend, what do we have? We have lower highs and lower lows. Okay, so I'm gonna go through each of these different terms, and I am gonna go through and give you an example through a drawing, and then an example through the live market. Okay, so we know the market structure is the rhythm and patterns that the market follows in a certain trend. In an uptrend, the rhythm and pattern the rhythm and the pattern in an uptrend is higher highs and higher lows, and the rhythm and pattern in a downtrend is lower highs and lower lows. Okay, so we can see right here in the uptrend, which is the green one, right? We have a high, and also let me pull out my highlighter. So we have a high, we have a low, we have a higher high, we have a higher low, which is also why I have these HL and HH's right here. So we have a higher high, a higher low, a higher high, and higher low. And the market will continue the uptrend as long as we keep making higher highs and don't break our higher low. Okay, so in a downtrend, what do we have? What pattern and rhythm do we follow in the downtrend? Well, we have a high, we have a low, but then we have a lower high, and then ultimately we make a lower low, a lower high, a lower low, and another lower high. Okay, so we see in an uptrend, we have the patterns a higher high, higher lows, and higher highs and higher lows. Sorry. And in the downtrend, we have a pattern lower highs and lower lows, lower highs and lower lows. Okay. So now let's go into the market to show an example of that. Okay.
Hey,
We have a high, we have a low, we have a higher high, we have a higher low, before ultimately making higher highs, higher low, and ultimately that's where it stops. Why? Because this last higher low gets broken, and so sorry about that, didn't mean to draw that. Ultimately, this last higher low got broken, and so we will have a change of character, which we will go over that. Okay, so after breaking this last higher low, we have a change of character, right? So now that we see how to mark out our higher highs and higher lows in the actual market, let's see how to mark out lower highs and lower lows in the market. Okay, we have these higher highs. So we see we have lower highs and lower lows, right? Okay, so we know how to mark out our lower highs and lower lows throughout the markets, and we also know how to mark out higher highs throughout the markets. Okay, so let's go to the next part of market structure, break of structure. Okay, so you will get break of structures in your higher highs and in your lower highs and lower lows. So a break of structure, you will always get the break of structure in your trend. Okay, so what is a break of structure? When price breaks your highs or lows following the trend, okay? So now let me show you a drawing example, and then I will show you an example in the market, okay? So now that we were at our drawings, let's mark out our break of structures so we know what a break of structure is, okay? So let me pull out my highlighter. So what is a break of structure? Let's come back real quick and read it. Our break of structure, let me dim this a little bit, sorry about that. Our break of structure is when price breaks your highs or lows following the trend, not reversing the trend. So a break of structure is when you are breaking your highs following the trend, okay? So now let's look at this in our example drawing. So where do we break our high or break our low following the trend, okay? So right here we can see we broke our last high following the trend. So what would that be? What would that be considered? A break of structure, right? Because we broke our last high following the trend, right? So where's another break of structure? Right here is another break of structure. Why is that a break of structure? Because we broke our last high following the trend, okay? And so on, so forth, okay? So now let's look at our downtrend. So we know our break of structure is when price breaks our highs or breaks our lows following the trend, right? So where's our break of structure? Where did we break a low at? We broke our low right here. So we broke our low right here following the trend downwards. So what is this? This will be a break of structure, okay? So let's mark it another one. Where do we get another break of structure? Where does price break another low or high following the trend? Okay, so right here we can see price broke our last low following the trend. So this would be considered a break of structure, okay? So now that we know what break of structures look like in our drawings, let's go to our actual market and find out where our break of structures are, okay? So we come to the market. Sorry about that. So we come to the market, and now let's look for our break of structures, right? So we know we have a high, a low, and what did we do? We broke that low, creating a break of structure. Break of structure, right? What do we have? Now we have another low and another high. And what did we ultimately do? We broke that low following the trend. So this would be a break of structure, right? So let's do one more example. We broke structure. We have another high, another lower high, and another lower low. So where do we break structure again? Breaking our last low following the trend. Well, our last lower low is right here. We broke trend. We broke that last low following the trend. So that means right there is our break of structure, right? Okay, now let's find an example in our uptrend, okay? So let's pull price down here, and we can find an uptrend. So we have a low, we have a low, we have a low, a high, we have a low, so we have a low, we have a high, a higher low, a higher high, still have this low, and ultimately a higher low, a higher high. And we're gonna discard this area down here, okay? Just show, just so I can show you the example, okay? So where ultimately do we break our last high? Where do we break our last high following the trend? Well, we can see right here, we broke our high, broke up, creating a break of structure because we broke our high continuing following the trend. We broke our high following the trend, okay? So let's mark out another one. So where do we have a high and low? So we know this is our last higher high. So where do we break structure? Well, we can see we broke our high following the trend up here. So what is this? This will be another break of structure, right? So now we see whenever we break our highs following the trend, or when we break our lows following the trend, we can see that is a break of structure, okay? And so these are very important terms to know because you don't want to get mixed up in these terms whenever people say them, or so you can know these things whenever you're actually in the market, okay? So let me remove all those drawings so we can come back over here. So what is a change of character? A change of character, also known as a CHOC for short, when our last higher low gets broken or our last lower high gets broken, meaning a reversal in trend, okay? So all a change of character is a reversal in trend, okay? So let me mark it out for y'all. What a change of character is, we have a high, a low, a higher high, a higher low, right? So what are we expecting next? Since we're getting higher highs and higher lows, that is an uptrend. So what are we expecting next after the higher low? We are expecting another break of structure, creating a higher high. But in a change of character example, what would we get? Well, we could get price come and touch this higher high, not breaking it, or we can get price come short of this higher high before ultimately breaking our last higher low. Because remember, what is a change of character? It's a reversal in trend. How do you get the reversal in trend? By breaking our last swing, okay? So our last swing was our last higher low, right? So we broke past our higher low, ultimately reversing the trend, right? Because in an uptrend, what do we create? In an uptrend, we create higher highs, higher lows. Well, in this example, we created a lower high and then ultimately creating a lower low. So after you break this last swing, this last higher low swing, that will give you a change of character, okay? So now let's do an example in a downtrend, okay? So for a downtrend, we have a swing, we have a high, now we have a low, now we have a lower high, now we have a lower low, right? So what are we expecting next? We are expecting to create another lower high, to create another lower low. But what would we get an example for a change of character? Excuse me. In a change of character example, we would get price come to our last lower low, not breaking it, or we could get price come short of our last lower low before breaking the last lower high, right? Because this is our last lower high. Before breaking our last lower high, creating a higher high and higher low and reversing trend, okay? So right here would be a change of character. Why is this a change of character? Because our last lower high, which was supposed to be safe, because we know when we make a lower high, we need to create a lower low to continue the trend. But what did we do? We ultimately created a higher low and then broke our swing, broke our last lower high before creating a higher high, okay? So that is what a change of character is, and change of character is ultimately a reversal in trend. Okay, so now let's go to the markets and find out, and let's go to the markets and see what that is. I have an example right here, a good one. So what do we have? We have our low, our lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower lower low, lower high, lower low, then ultimately creating a higher high, right? Because we had a lower high, we created a lower low, but now we made a higher high before ultimately, what did we do? We didn't break the level, we just remained the same. So we hit that last lower low, not breaking it. Then ultimately, what did we do? We created another higher high, right? Before creating higher lows and higher highs. So ultimately reversing trend, right? Because now instead of making the lower highs and lower lows, lower highs and lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, now we have a higher high, a higher, well, we didn't make it yet, but now we have a higher high, came and couldn't break the last lower low. And so we have a higher high. This we have the same low, and now we have another higher high, and now we have a lower, now we have a higher low. Okay, so that's a reversal from the downtrend to an uptrend. Now let's see a reversal from an uptrend back to a downtrend. Okay, here we can see we were creating these higher highs and higher lows, higher lows, higher highs, higher low, before ultimately not making higher highs no more because we didn't break it, but we still have a higher low, right? We still have a higher low, but ultimately we came short of making another higher high. And what did we do? We ended up breaking down, giving a change of character, giving a change of character. Why is this a change of character? Because our last higher low got broken, meaning we were reversing trend, creating a lower low. Okay, so where did we get? We got this reversal in trend by breaking our last higher low, and then ultimately creating lower low and lower highs, lower low, lower low. So ultimately we broke this trend, giving us a reversal, a change of character, and creating lower lows and lower highs now, and lower lows, lower highs, and so on, so forth. Okay, so I hope everybody is understanding that, because I'm really trying to break it down the best way I can right now. But this is only my first video breaking these confluences and market structure down, but ultimately in the future I will have more videos coming out for these things. And I hope, if any questions y'all have, please drop a comment below, and ultimately it will help me to know where I need to get better at, and ultimately what videos I need to put out in the future. Okay, so let's go to our next one, a retracement. What is a retracement? These two parts are very important. Okay, a retracement and pullback, these two things are very important to know, because they look very much similar, but they can really hurt you if you do not understand the difference between them both. Okay, one not understanding these two different confluences can really change you from being a profitable trader, or being on the right side of the market, or being on the wrong side of the market. Okay, what is an retracement? Okay, so a retracement, okay, let's read this again. A retracement is a temporary pause in the trend, looking like a pullback, but not meeting the requirements of one. Okay, and a pullback is when price pauses the trend after breaking structure to pull back to an area of orders. And a pullback has to have at least three candles that close above each other. Okay. Excuse me. So we know a pullback. Let's go back to this real quick. We know a pullback has to have at least three candles that close above each other, right? So each of these each of these higher lows in the swing are pullbacks, okay? Each of these higher lows are pullbacks. Each of these lower highs are pullbacks, okay? But you will see in the market that price isn't always this pretty, okay? Price isn't this pretty as you see in the actual markets, that it doesn't look this easy to get in, right? Well, that the trend actually wants to continue, because look, we'll have this downtrend, right? You'll have the downtrend in your smaller time frames, right? But ultimately those downtrends are in your uptrends, right? Because you will need a downtrend in your uptrend order for price to fall back down to that area of orders, right? To ultimately break structure, right? You will need this downtrend to come down to this area to ultimately continue the trend. So you will have a downtrend in your uptrend, but ultimately that's why you got to come to the bigger time frames to see what price is actually doing, so you don't get caught in these little pullbacks thinking this is the actual trend, and not surprised when you get a change of character, because what is this? Price breaking your last lower high, so you'll get that change of character in your small frame, and it'll actually continue the real trend, okay? And so price is fractal, and I will have to, please, if you, I will have to go over that in another video, because price being fractal, and that is a separate video on its own, okay? And so what is the retracement? So we know the pullback, this is the pullback, right? We know this is the pullback, but our retracement will ultimately be something like this. It will be looking like it's pulling back, but it won't actually be a full pullback, because say these lines I'm creating right here aren't the actual three candles, okay? It would probably be about two candles. It'll be a little pause in price, and then it will look like it's giving a change of character to continue that trend. So getting buyers to get buyers in, and then ultimately stopping them back out and creating this downtrend to ultimately give a real change of character to continue the uptrend up. You see what I'm saying? So it will fake traders out by looking like price did a pullback, because this looks like it did a pullback, right? Because it pulled back, then gave me my change of character, right? But no, it just gave this retracement to fake them out. It didn't break the high, and then ultimately it's going to do the real pullback to ultimately spring back up and continue the trend. And that is the same thing in a downtrend, okay? So price, okay, sorry. Let me switch this one to a green one so we can see it. So same thing for a downtrend, right? You will have price going down like this, and then you will have a change of character. Price will be having an uptrend in your actual downtrend, right? And then give an actual change of, then give another change of character to actually do the real trend. You see what I'm saying? So you can trade the pullback in the actual trend, right? So you can ride this uptrend up to your, and we will get further on to that. You can ride this uptrend ultimately up to your fair value gaps or your order blocks, where you know price is actually going to continue that large move down, right? But we want to follow the trend, okay? As beginners, and ultimately for myself as well, I am a beginner, but ultimately you want to follow the trend and trade the trend. You don't want to trade the pullbacks. You can trade the pullbacks, but that is a riskier way to play the game. You get what I'm saying? You want to follow the trend. Always follow the trend, because that is where you're going to get your big moves, and that's ultimately where you're going to be more confident at following your moves. Because on this uptrend, you can get all types of change of characters and whatever, because it's ultimately just retracing back into an area. It's not actually it won't actually always follow a specific structure, because ultimately that is not the structure that price is actually wanting to move in. You get what I'm saying? So in the retracement, you would get something like this. You would get something like this. You would get your downtrend, right? And then you would get your change of character. And people would think, okay, I got my change of, okay. So you would get your change of character, and that would look like my retracement before ultimately continuing down, right? Oh, okay. Sorry, let me go back over that. So in the downtrend retracement, you would get something like this, right? Because you have the down, right? And then ultimately, when you start to get your retracement, which you are going to think is your pullback, but the retracement would what? It would give a change of character, right? Because now we have to get this uptrend. And so we would be breaking up, and we would not fully do the pullback. So say these are like 2 candles, right? And so ultimately it would come back down. So people would think, okay, I got a change of character. I got my, and they would think right here would be my pullback, right? And so they would be like, okay, I got my change of character, and price wants to continue down. But no, price is just tricking you out, because you thought this was the pullback when this was really just 2 candles and it was only a retracement. You get what I'm saying? And so ultimately it would actually stop these people out, and it would follow no type of structure, because it doesn't have to, because it's ultimately in the pullback stage, and ultimately doesn't have any real structure to have to follow. Okay, so then it will ultimately stop them back out, and then it will do its actual pullback, then give the real change of character to do the real trend. Okay, so now that we drew it out in our drawings, now what do we have to do? Let's go to our examples in the market. Okay, from this downtrend right here, and this is easy. So I'm pretty sure y'all can see the retracements through the actual markets. Okay, if y'all were following me, y'all could probably see the retracements just from here. And please try to quiz yourself whenever you're following through these videos. Please try to quiz yourself as I'm teaching you these things. So I'll give you like little time, you know what I'm saying, to actually look at it and be like, I think this is where the retracement is. I think this is where the retracement is. And then when I actually go over it, you can be like, and I actually show you where the retracement and actual pullbacks are, you can see if what you thought is right. And so ultimately you can see if you're learning. And if you got it wrong, don't beat yourself up over it, because you're learning something new, right? I didn't understand this when I first started, and ultimately I am still learning this, okay? And I am a year and some change in, and I'm still learning this stuff, okay? So, sorry, I was talking so much, now I gotta breathe, okay? So we know we have our high, we have our low, we have our lower high, our lower low, our lower high, we have a lower high right here, lower high, lower low, lower high, right? And so we know where our actual pullbacks are, right? Because our actual lower highs are our actual pullbacks, right? Right? But so where are our retracements? Okay, so we can see we have a retracement right here. Why? Because that was a temporary pause in price. Okay, we have a retracement right here, because that is a temporary pause in price. Okay, that's not a pullback, that is a retracement, a temporary pause in price. What did we have right here? We had a temporary pause in price. Okay, what do we have? Look at these candles right here. Let me zoom in. As we can see, we have these little pauses in price, right? Where price is dropping down, but we have these buyer candles. So these are like little retracements, all right? This is a pullback too. So yeah, we have this pause. So this is actually not a swing right here. Sorry about that. This is not a swing right here. This is just a retracement actually. This is all a retracement. That's all this is. This is all a retracement, because we have our high, low, a high, a low. So this is all retracement. This is retracement because these are temporary pauses in price. This is our actual swing low. These are our actual pullbacks. This is a retracement, retracement, retracement because retracements are temporary pauses in price, while our pullbacks are our actual swing moves. Okay, so I hope y'all got that, and I hope I broke it down where y'all can understand it. And I if y'all didn't really get it in this model, I hope y'all got it in this drawing that I have, okay? And so we see that in the downtrend our retracements and pullbacks. Now let me look at an uptrend, okay? Because remember, I'm gonna give you the uptrend versions and the downtrend version. So if I didn't explain it well and you didn't get the way I explained it in the downtrend, I hope you can understand it in the uptrend. Okay. So let's just see right here. We have a quick uptrend, right? So we have a low, we have a high, we have another low, a high, a low, a high, ultimately a low, a high, and another low, right? And ignore all this, ignore all that, right? And pretend that isn't there, right? Okay, so where are our retracements? Where are our pauses in price while we continue this uptrend? Okay, what do we see? A pullback is when price pauses the trend after breaking structure to pull back to an area of orders and has to have at least 3 candles, right? So what did we have? Price did pause and it did give us 3 candles, but there is also another thing. You have to make sure that it pulls back to an area of demand, and that is where your order blocks and fair value gaps come into place, because you want to also know if it's a pullback or a retracement. Is one, it has to have 3 candles, which, okay, I see this retracement does have 3 candles down closing above each other, right? Because let me zoom in. Okay, that annoys me. Okay, so we see we have 1 candle close above. We have 1 candle close, we have another candle close below, and we have another candle close below. Okay, so that meets the requirements of a pullback. That meets one of them. But another one is it pulling back to an area of demand? Okay, is it pulling back to an area of orders? Okay, so what is an area of orders? And that is where we can kind of skip forward. An area of orders is where our order blocks are, because our order blocks are the candle or candles right before the big move to break structure, continuing the trend, right? A fair value gap are the big strength candles that leave a gap, meaning an imbalance of orders that usually sit above your order blocks. Okay, so your order blocks are the candle or candles right before the big move to break structure, continuing the trend, while your fair value gaps are the big strength candles that leave a gap, meaning an imbalance of orders that usually sit above your order blocks. Okay, so that ties in to your retracements or your actual pullbacks. A retracement, like we have this one right here, this is a retracement. This didn't pull back to a fair value gap, because what is a fair value gap? 3 big strength candles leaving a gap somewhere, or an imbalance of orders. It didn't pull back to an area of a fair value gap or an order block, right? So what did price actually do? Price actually came back and tapped in fair value gap. Why is this area a fair value gap? Why is this area a fair value gap? Because what? One, this is our order block. Because why? This is our order block. Why? Because this is our candle or candles before our break of structure move, right? And so, where do we see a fair value gap above it? We have one, two, three candles and their strength, right? And also, they leave a gap, meaning an imbalance in price, right? So, I can mark out another area to know if price pulls into there. I want to see price react off of that area. And so I can ultimately hop in the move following the trend upwards to break structure and make profits, right? So what did price do? It ignored this retracement, which, like I said, you have buyers hopping in after they see these strength candles and they got this, what they would think a pullback, right? And they would see this reaction like, okay, I got my pullback. I see two strength candles, which is an engulfing candle, engulfing these candles. Okay, I'm in to ultimately break structure. But no, it didn't pull into an area of demand. An area of demand or your fair value gaps or your order blocks, right? It didn't pull into one of them areas. So what did price do? It faked them back out, which stomping them out, right? And pulling back into your fair value gap, right? And ultimately giving a reaction, right? And we did have another pullback into our order block actually, which that is why you always have your stop loss at your order block, right? Because price can come and tap into your fair value gap and give a reaction and break structure and give you your profits. But also it can give a reaction, but also it can come back down to tap my order block and ultimately create that move. So that's why your stop loss always has to be in at the end of your order block. Do you get what I'm saying? Because price will come in both of those areas, right? And so that's why you want to make sure you get a good reaction off of your fair value gap so you know to get in, or so you can get in for the move, the entirety of the move. But remember, you don't even have to stay in for for this example 467 and break of structures at 473. You don't even have to stay in for that whole move, because remember, we want to get in and out. We are scalpers, right? So ultimately you can participate in that move, right? And once I see it get close, and if I get some type of reaction, which this is the next day you had a gap down, right? So you wouldn't even be able to see that. But say these were the current days, this was the same day, and you see you had a big red candle engulfing somewhere, you can know to get out and you would still be up profit. And what you can let price ride down, and you could be waiting for it to tap that order block, and you can see if that order block is going to hold up. How do I see? By seeing the reaction off of that order block. We see this big reaction off of this order block, right? We see these two very big strength candles, right? And so we know that this order block has power to potentially break structure, continuing the trend, and so it did. And what did price actually do? Price actually left another fair value gap where price could potentially move into and retrace to and get a reaction off of. It didn't, because ultimately we ended up being in a huge selling trend, which that is something for later date, right? But ultimately this fair value gap is an area of imbalance where price can retrace to again, okay? And so I went over order blocks and fair value gaps kind of quick, but I can make separate videos on these two confluences to really break them down. But this video is mainly so you can understand what you are looking at in the markets, okay? Yeah, this video is mainly so you can understand, but I hope I did break it down for y'all good enough so you can understand at least what you are looking at when you get into the markets, and you know a gist of what to look for and where to get in at these areas, right? Excuse me. And I will have more videos going over these order blocks and fair value gaps, because they can get a little tricky. Okay, these order blocks and fair value gaps can get a little tricky. So if you have any questions, comments, and concerns about any of this, please drop a comment below and drop your questions down below. I will be having more videos coming out. And remember, this is just a startup of my videos, so they might not be the best explained and might not be broken down the best way. But ultimately, I'm just starting this, and ultimately, I really want to be able to teach my knowledge to you guys. So ultimately, my breakdowns and analysis will get better for you guys. And one more thing before, equal highs, equal lows, that is a range. We do not trade this. We do not trade equal highs, equal lows, because ultimately we want to be in a trending market, because a trending market is how we make money. We don't make money in equal highs, equal lows, okay, guys? And so I hope I broke down this good enough for you guys so you at least know what you are looking at when you get into the market, and you at least know what to look for to get into a trade. And remember, guys, trading is risky. It can come with big losses if you do not protect yourself, and if you do not follow your disciplines, and if you do not know your rules, okay, guys? So remember to study these things and not to hop in randomly without knowing what you are looking for, because ultimately that is gambling, okay, guys? And so my whole goal is to teach you guys and make you guys money, not lose you guys money. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please drop them down below. And remember, guys, I love you guys. And remember, guys, stay persistent. And remember, guys, stay persistent, passionate, make sure to get paid. Peace.